Hi everyone, my name is Ingrid Honkala and I'm here today to share with you an amazing story. This is a story that clearly reveals that we are more than our physical bodies and that we are not in this physical realm alone. We're always being led and guided by higher order wisdom. The reason I know this is because what I am about to reveal to you is my own life story. But because this is the first video that I record of the kind, I want to first share with you a little bit of my background. Who is Ingrid? So I am going to start by telling you that I was born in Bogota, Colombia, where I grew up with my parents and three sisters. Although I grew up high up in the Andes, my love for the ocean started at a very young age when my parents brought me to see the ocean for the very first time at the age of 4. Once I was in front of it, I was completely drawn by it. I stood there like a model, just looking at this huge, vast ocean, and I was there until my mom came to me and said, "Ingrid, are you okay?" And I said, "Mom, this looks like a huge blanket, and someday I am going to know what is underneath that blanket." After this trip, I was drawn by every book, every picture, anything that would talk or describe the ocean. Then when I was 5 years old, one day I approached my dad and I said to him, "Dad, when I grow up, I am going to become a marine scientist." My dad looked at me with amazement and said, "Wow, that's what you want to do? That's what you will do." So this was incredible because his comment plus my idea or my love for the ocean never diminished. And even though I was too little and people thought I was going to change my mind, I never did. So I pursued my dream, and when I went to college, I became a marine biologist and worked in the field for a while. Later on, I moved to the United States, where I joined a master's PhD program in marine sciences with emphasis in biological oceanography. As you can see, besides being interested just about the ocean, I wanted to know and explore the life in the ocean. That's why I also joined the different programs that were involved in biology. For me, it was very important to know and understand life. Which is amazing is these parallels with my life, in that from a very young age I have been in wonder of what is deep within and is beyond what I will call the ocean of life. Since I was a little girl, I was different from the other girls and my sister in that I wouldn't play with dolls. I was very interested in knowing and understanding what was behind and beyond everything. So my toys mainly consisted in a microscope. I had also a chemistry kit. I had a toolbox because I was wondering and wanting to know what was like in the electronics in the house. I was dismantling and putting together things, and I also wanted to know what was beyond, so I wanted to have a telescope. So this is all incredible because my idea was, what can I see that is beyond and hidden behind what my eyes and my 5 senses can see? And all this bring me back even to a younger age, when I had an experience that pretty much opened this channel or this yearn for me to wanting to know. All of this started when I had a near-death experience at the age of almost 3. It was early in the mornings when my parents had to leave for work and we were left at the care of the maid. While growing up, the financial situation at home was not easy and both my parents were forced to work and we were left at the care of the maid who lived with us in the house. That was a very normal thing to do when I grew up. It was part of the culture. So that morning after they left, my sister and I was, like I said, almost 3. She was only 1 year older than me. And we decided to go to the patio, where sitting in a corner, there was a big tank. It was a deep tank that held water, and it was used for hand washing clothes. So next to the tank, there was a little surface where the clothes could be scrubbed. Back then we didn't have a washing machine, so that's why we had this deep tank. But I want to be clear about something. People have usually the misconception that because I was born in Colombia, I come from a hot weather, and since Bogota is sitting high up in the Andes, usually the temperature at night and early in the morning can be quite chilly. So that day, the temperature in that tank, in the water, could have been probably around 30 or 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Then my sister and I looked at the tank and decided, hey, we want to play catch. So we grabbed a couple of balls, and the walls of the tank were quite high. So we found a couple of stools. We climbed to the tank. She sat very comfortably in the surface that was next to the tank for scrubbing clothes. And I went on the other side where the edge was kind of thin. And I went on my knees. I bended my knees, and it was a very unsafe situation, but we were too young to think about safety. So we grabbed these balls and started to play with each other. But let me tell you, what happened this day still remains so clear in my mind that I can remember with such clarity the ball we were playing with. And one of them had the alphabet and animals engraved on it. And once she threw this ball at me and I was about to catch it, the ball fell on the water. And when I tried to grab it, it rolled on the surface of the water. And I just couldn't grab it and I fell. But the amazing thing was, like, the last thing I remember seeing was and feeling was the letters engraved on the ball and this little white bunny smiling at me. Then once I fell in the tank, the first feeling was this extreme sense of being cold. I was so cold that it felt like my chest went inwards and I just couldn't breathe. At that moment, I just started to just fight for air. It was this sense of anguish. I wasn't feeling pain. I was just in this desperate moment of wanting to breathe. Actually, at the time, I was too little to even know that if you fall in the water, you would drown. So I just remember sensing the bottom of the tank in my feet, and I just pushed up, wanting to go to the surface to get out of this tank, to be able to breathe. But I sank again in the water, and there was nothing I could do. I was completely fighting and having this moment where I was just wanting to breathe. Then suddenly I just went to total and complete and absolute peace. I don't know what happened. I was just experiencing calmness, serenity. There was nothing to fight for anymore. The whole feelings of anxiety and desperation and wanting to breathe were gone. And now I was in this complete atmosphere of peace and serenity. Then I remember that the very last thing I saw with my eyes was darkness, because this tank was a very deep tank made of cement. So when I opened my eyes, before I went into this sense of peace, was just darkness. But suddenly there was a light that it was like if the light of a candle had been lit, and this just little soothing light was enough to enlighten my entire watery surrounding. Then I look around, because now I was not in darkness anymore. Then I saw little bubbles floating all around me, and the bubbles had light. And as I was looking around, amazed by these beautiful bubbles, I saw a body. And it was a body suspended in the water. And the amazing thing is that when I saw that body, I knew that that was my body. And I looked at it, and I was not afraid. I want to tell you that I was actually born as a very sick child. So for the first 3 years of my life as Ingrid, I always felt unwell. So now I was submerged in this state of incredible well-being. So when I look at this body, I just thought, I'm not going back to that. And I literally turned around and left. And as I was turning around and with this sense of living, flowers started to bloom from nowhere. There was these gorgeous flowers blooming in the air, and I suddenly was lifted and carried away by these flowers. And although there was not a sense of like an enclosed area or a tunnel or anything like that, I was lifted and carried in a forward direction by these flowers. And I was actually taken like to a place where I could see far in the distance a big source of light. So as I was just enjoying and immersed in this incredible feeling of joy and amazement, just in like that, in a second, I appeared in the maid's room. I was looking at the maid from above, and I had like this 360-degree view of the whole place. And she was there, lying on the bed, listening to a soap opera. So this is incredible because the level of clarity about this whole experience can bring me even to remember the soap opera that she would listen in the radio. And I look at her from above and I just thought, oh, that's Maria. She's lying there listening to the radio. And then just like that, in another, it's just a snap, I appear on my mom path. I was looking at my mom from above. And oh, now I was there. My mom was walking. She was about to catch her bus, and I can tell you that the distance between the house and the place where she had to catch her bus was about 10 minutes. And she was close to her bus stop when I just looked at her and I said, oh, that's Mom. And at that moment, she felt like if something was going wrong. So that just made me wonder how connected we are, and how she just probably maybe hear me. I don't know, but this is what we also call like the mom instinct. Is how close we in reality are from each other, and how we can sense and feel our loved ones. Is this connection that we have with each other. So my mom felt like something was going wrong with one of her babies, and she just turned around, and I saw her anguish, and I just looked at her, and she just turned around and started to run back to the house. In the meanwhile, I just didn't really like care much of what was happening, and I just started to just look at the trees and the streets and the animals and the people, and wherever I put my mind, I went. At this point, it's like time and space had vanished, and I could be at any place at any time. If I would look at the end of the street, I would just be there. If I would look at something I like in the background, I would just be there. And I was kind of playing this little game of going places. Suddenly everything started to just vanish. Then as everything was vanishing, I just started to just see light, until I was completely engulfed and submerged in pure bright light. This was absolutely incredible. I felt the most amazing sense of peace, love. It's like I have been invited, and I have been like welcomed with open arms by this light. And although I had seen my body suspended in the water, I have to tell you that up to this point, I did not have the awareness that I didn't really possess a body. I didn't have the awareness that I was not that person, that body that I left behind. Then I looked at myself, and I realized that I was made of pure bright light, just as the light that I was immersed in. And at that moment, I had the knowing that this was not the first time that I had experienced this state of being, and that I already have been a being of light before. And although I could not see other life experiences, I sensed like I was coming back home, like I was home. And it is like when you go to work every day and you leave your house and you come back and you feel welcome, you feel good, you feel at home. And you do this every day. You leave and come back. This is how I felt. I knew that I have been in this place many more times and that I was just coming back. And I felt good and I felt welcome and I felt invited. And even though I didn't see any other beings, I felt that I was not alone. I felt that there was someone else, that there was more beings or some other presences around me, and that I was not alone in this place, and that this whatever sense of belonging came from something welcoming me. And while I was experiencing all this incredible sense of being at home and feeling peaceful and feeling welcome, my mom, who was running back home, finally made it. And she went into the house, and although we live in a big house and she could have chosen to go to any room in the house, she knew exactly where to go. And she directed herself to the patio where my sister was still like sitting on that flat surface. She had been there like crying and moaning, and she looked at my mom and she said, "Mom, my sister is there, Ingrid is there, and I cannot get her." My mom ran to the tank and got me out of the water. My body was blue, my lips were blue. I didn't have a pulse. I was not breathing. I was like pretty much like a raggedy doll. So my mom grabbed me, and because she worked with little kids, she was trained on CPR. So she grabbed me, she started to blow air into my lungs, she started to just push her fingers into my little chest, and she was just shaking me. She was doing everything she could to bring me back. And then in the meanwhile, I was just up there, completely detached from this world, from this realm, from this body. I was just living in heaven. So I honestly didn't feel absolutely anything of what mom was trying to do or to this body. And suddenly I just felt like I had jumped from the tallest sky rise in the world. And I just fell and was vacuumed back, like sucked back into the body. Let me tell you, this was the most horrendous feeling I had ever experienced. And then I was back. I knew that I was back because I felt unwell again. I felt heavy. I felt the heaviness of the body. I felt the intense cold that I felt when I fell in the tank. Then I knew I was back. And to be honest with you, it was quite disappointing. I just didn't want to be here. And after that, things went actually pretty bad for us because I got sicker than before. I developed bronchitis, asthma. I didn't want to eat. I felt very, very detached from my body. I felt very detached from my persona. And although I can tell that I hadn't probably developed a personality because I was too little, I knew I felt different from the person I was before. I didn't feel like a kid anymore. I just had really hard time getting along with other kids because I felt that I was not a child. And I also felt detached from my parents and my sisters. And when I came back, I had the knowing that my biological parents were not actually my parents. I felt them as more like as my equals. It was really hard. It was really hard because to me, things were different, and I wanted to go back to that state of well-being I had experienced. Then, although my parents tried to take me to the doctor, at the time there was not too much money to try to do much in the sense of psychologists and stuff like that. So they did what they could to deal with a very hard situation. Then over time, I just wanted to just be left alone, and I was just in general having a hard time. I was already like entered I was between 3 and 4 when I would just look at myself in the mirror and literally pull my hair off and cry and go to my mom and say, "You don't understand, this is not me. This is not my name. I should not be here." So my mom would just hug me and say, "Don't say things like that. You're a pretty girl, and God has given you this life, and you should be thankful." So knowing that no one could understand me, or I couldn't relate with anyone, I just started to become really quiet and even more isolated from the world. Another thing that happened right after the near-death experience is that I started to have what we describe as out-of-body experiences, although I didn't have idea that was what was happening to me. But right after, I started to experience very similar things that the ones I experienced when I nearly died. I will go bed, I will close my eyes, and I was starting to see colors and images and movements very similar to the ones during the NDE. And things will go really fast and they will go really slow. And I actually could see things and colors and images of things that I never have seen in this realm, in this life as Ingrid. And I would be taken into a place where I felt incredibly well, and I would experience a little glimpse of that realm of the light. So although all the feelings were disturbing, and every time I would go there, I would go back into my body, like being sucked back, like during the near-death experience. And even though all of these was very disturbing, I was being brought into experience again that little moment of the light, and I wanted to keep going back. So at least I started to feel better about going to bed and going to rest, and the more these experiences happened and the more intense they were, the more I started to calm down a little and feel that things were better. But let me tell you, things were really hard. Were really hard for all of us. But thankfully, the help that we needed came in the most miraculous and unexpected way. And this help opened new doors and new chapters in my life that help us to completely see the world and help me to see the world in a completely different way. So if you want to know more about the story, please watch the second part of this video where I will introduce you to the beings of light. Thank you very much for staying with me today, and if you need to know more about me, you want to know more about my story and who I am, please go visit my website at ingridhonkala.com, and you can also find me on different media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I have also recently published a book called A Brightly Guided Life. So if you're interested, please buy my book and learn the whole story from beginning to end. I love you, and I hope you stay with me in the second part of this video, which is just following this one. Thank you, and see you later. Bye.